Today's version of the Transportation Committee meeting will be called to order at 4:03 p.m. on Wednesday, June 8th, 2022. As far as roll call, we have three members of our committee here. We have Alderman Savage, we have Alderwoman Rhonda Pentel-Charles, and Alderwoman Karma O'Neill. I will entertain a motion for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Agenda is approved. I'm going to make one change to the order of our agenda, and I was going to ask Transportation Commission Chair Kirk Riegel to come and give his report first.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I appreciate this. You have no items of, no decision items on your agenda apart from appointments today, but it's very nice to be able to get our word in before. Kurt?
Yes. Yes, I'm Kurt Riegel, Chairman of the Transportation Board. It's very nice to be able to speak to you early in the course of events because on those occasions when you have serious decision items, we always like to be able to have you have the benefit of our advice, good or bad. My report is the following. We have, as you know, we've been working toward the end of our most intense round of work on fare free transit. We made our recommendations to you. Those recommendations still stand. We understand, I think, the hesitancy that has been expressed by a number of the members of the City Council. To make a long story short, we think that that hesitation is partially based on information which is subject to additional analysis and debate. In particular, the budgetary numbers that you have been provided, we do not believe accurately portray the situation. And I will be providing some additional material on that for clarification. It's not that the numbers you have been provided are wrong, it's that they rest on assumptions that we believe to be incorrect. And I will clarify that later. So fare-free transit is something that I think everybody agrees is desirable for the long term. The question appears to be timing. We have spoken strongly in favor of fare-free transit as an option that can be implemented now. Adequate study has been done. The cost is low and affordable and would lead to 25 to 50% increase in ridership. Those are the primary arguments. All of the other options for improving Annapolis transit are good, they're excellent, they should be done, but they all seem to be associated with timescales that range from 2 to 4 years and with substantial additional capital and operating funds requirements. So it seems to us that you are going to be operating this system, imperfect as it is, at least for another year or two. And our recommendation is that you take such steps as can be taken now at low cost to make this non-ideal system as productive as it can be. Moving on to the next topic, we examined the legislation for reducing parking requirements in Annapolis that has been promoted by, notably by Alderman Schandelmeyer. We had a presentation by the chairman of the Eastport Civic Association, who was not fully supportive of the proposal as written in the first draft of legislation. And I know that you are continuing your consideration of that matter. We will have Alderman Schandelmeyer speak to the next meeting of the Transportation Board to get the other side of this story. Members of the board, I think I can safely say, are divided on the issue. Some are very much in favor of it, some have hesitancy, but we will try to come to a recommendation nonetheless. And then final, one of the items that we want to look at is structural for the long term. everybody agrees that one of the factors, that the most important factor which inhibits the use of bicycles in Annapolis is safety. It's scary out there. People are right to be worried about riding bicycles because your life is at risk. And we need safe bicycle infrastructure. That is now being provided rarely and after long periods of time on a project-by-project basis. There is nothing structural in the budget which assures the city that over the long term, this infrastructure will be made available. Other countries and then some other US states have made fundamental structural changes in this. For example, in the Netherlands, whenever a road project is begun or a major reconstruction or repair of a road is made, the road authority is obliged to provide safe bicycle infrastructure as a part of that. I'm not talking about painted lines. I'm talking about segregated bicycle infrastructure. The situation now in Maryland is that we beg for pennies when thousands are spent on roads. And if it is possible somehow to tie safe bicycle infrastructure to roads as a matter of course, we would like to see if we can pursue that. So we're going to examine that and see what the city of Annapolis might do to further that objective. And that's the end of my report. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, one thing. Mr. Regal? Yes. Just one comment. I think if the board ever has any specific recommendations for areas where the board may feel it would be a good opportunity to install some kind of bike improvement or other transportation improvement, please let us know. We could then work to get it included as a capital project in the budget.
Yeah, thank you for that invitation, and we will do that. As you know, this problem is confounded by the fact that streets of Annapolis are under the authority of the city, the state, and the county variously. And a user of that street has no idea which authority governs, and we've got to make them somehow all work together. Thanks.
Thank you. Next up on our agenda, we have several appointments and reappointments. And we have, sorry. We have Hillary Raftovich here, I'm guessing, to speak to anyone that we don't have also in the room.
Madam Chair, I was wondering if I could move all the reappointments at once? Unless Ms. Raftovich has comments on the reappointments.
I just have there are 2 new appointments and 3 reappointments. The reappointments are ready to go. The new appointments, Mr. Giannetti is not available to be here, so I didn't know if you wanted to wait until your next meeting to meet him. Mr. Waters is the representative for St. John's College, so we usually just move those forward. St. John's has a seat on this board as well as the Naval Academy. So he was not able to be here as well, but I said I would speak on his behalf. So he's been requested by St. John's to represent the college on the board. So if you could move forward on that one.
The reappointments together and then the appointments talking? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Do I have a motion to move the reappointments of David DeQuinzio, Carol Kelly, Elizabeth Dolzel, Kirk Regal forwards as reappointments?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Aye. That motion passes, so those 4 individuals will move forward. Favorable.
Thank you.
Next up would be appointment 29-22, Taylor Waters. Do you have any information on Mr. Waters?
Sure. Mr. Waters is the Director of Student Services at St. John's College. He has been involved in some of the bicycle infrastructure work that we've been doing over there, and that's how we became acquainted with him. And as I said, this is really just a courtesy bringing this one, because we asked St. John's College to put somebody forward and the Naval Academy to put, I believe you have Zoe Johnson serving for the Naval Academy still. And so that we try to include them in all of our transportation questions. So that's
Great.
why we asked them.
Great. Do you have a question?
Yeah, so for this position and the Naval Academy, I think you said, are those actual members or are they just some of the ex officio?
They are members, they have full voting privileges.
I guess the only difference in the way that is that we don't recruit them from the resident base in the city. Those are,
Right.
we request recommendations from the institutions and they submit them.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm good with moving this one forward.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Taylor Waters has a favorable recommendation to go through to the city council. The next one is AP 30-22, John Giannetti Jr. to the Transportation Board. And you said he was unable to be here today?
He was unable to be here. I would recommend moving him to your next meeting. I can keep him in the system.
Okay. So can I have a motion to move him to our next meeting?
I move that we postpone AP 3022 until our next meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right. We'll put him on to our next meeting. Thank you. Next up on our agenda, we have committee presentations, ID 156-22, our presentation from Sebastian. Correct.
Well, good afternoon. I haven't seen any of you in so long. Here we are in the summer. This summer. Let me pull this over here. Well, we're delighted to be here this morning, this afternoon. And as the council knows, when the city went out and hired AMRP included Hunt Financial, but there were also several specific groups that we hired, and one that we have a direct contract with is VIA. And Sebastian Laurie is here today from VIA. Just putting this in the larger context, as you know, as you can see out the window, the garage has come down. We expect new construction to start the middle of July. You know, they're basically just cleaning up the site now, so that has been moving along quickly. And with that, with the closing and the demolition of the garage, all of the efforts for parking and mobility have come into play. And a lot of it has worked exceedingly well, and then there are some bugs as well. Council is aware that we moved everyone out of the garage, obviously, because the garage is down. The 248 parkers, mostly to Park Place, some went to GOTS, those that were not city employees. We also have put out a lot of options for the downtown business employees, and we have so far mixed results in that we have employees, for example, at Zachary's that are doing a video with us on how they love the various options, you know, parking at GOTS, walking for coffee, parking at Park Place, taking the shuttle. But we have certainly other employees who are still frustrated because, remember, the employees, many of them parked in the neighborhood. And by changing the parking in the neighborhood to paid parking for $4 an hour, which is high, it has meant that the employees no longer park there. Most of them are finding their way, but I think where we're hearing really the biggest pushback from the businesses is their customers. Customers are used to coming downtown, parking in the neighborhood, and walking over to the stores. And so those are the challenges that we have right now in terms of figuring out ways to message and market to customers, to tell them, where they can park, and how they can. The customers are probably not going to park at Park Place, but to get them into town, get them closer in, so that they're comfortable, running in for errands. That's right now, I think, our biggest challenge. In terms of the capacity, there's lots of capacity. And several of these lots, like Gott's and Whitmore, are very inexpensive. Some of them, for example, I parked the other day at the Yacht Basin. It's not inexpensive. I mean, it's convenient, but it's not inexpensive. The city we're meeting with Sam Medilla, who is looking to put valet parking on what would be the Donner lot. He's working with Chop Tank, and they want to have valet parking, so the city is looking at going in with them on that valet parking, which would certainly create another offering for customers. So there is lots of parking. It's getting the messaging out. What has been really successful, I remember it was the mayor's decision to wrap these buses in that color, that magenta. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, this is something. But it's actually been successful. The numbers on the buses in the last couple of weeks, I just heard them this afternoon. They've really, on the magenta bus, they've really increased because people can see it, they know where it is, and everybody is really pleasantly surprised with the response and the growth on the circulator. The circulator route, I think everybody knows, and to date, they have, by and large, been meeting that 10-minute route schedule. The other issue that's been so significant is the marketing. The little brochure you see up there, we gave out these brochures to all the businesses. It tells them where they can park, how much they can park for, how they can get a hold of VIA. There's also been a lot of signage. We think, we had a call today, we think the signage probably needs to be larger. What we were hearing from a couple of the downtown businesses is that people who have not gone online ahead of time still come in, they drive downtown, there's no Hillman, and then they're on Main Street and they don't know where to go. So there's several things that are being added to this effort. There'll be an AM channel. I think it's going to be 1600, which will just have a continual announcement about where to park, how to park. We're going to put some signs up on buildings on our way into town, that basically large banners. Part of the issue is we can't put any signs on Rao, and we really can't put any signs on West Street because they're state roads. So the signage is getting larger, is the short version of the signage. This kind of signage that you see out by the West Gate is very successful. It's large enough, people, can see it, they don't miss it. So our next efforts will really be on the customers, figuring out how to get the customers aware of where they can park easily, and then capturing people sooner with the large signage. So that's sort of the big picture of where we go, where we are. Generally, by and large, it's been very positive, and the Magenta Shuttle has been a big success. And I will, with that, I'm going to turn this over to you. Would you like this?
Let's do this. Excuse me one second. All right. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Well, hello again. My name is Sebastian Loria, and I am a member of the VIA Transportation team. as a member of the company partnering with your city and operating the Annapolis Go service, I'm really excited to be here to spend a few minutes with you all talking about how Annapolis Go is serving your community currently, helping with the parking challenges, just to talk a little bit about how the service actually functions, how you can use it, and then where we see how Annapolis Go and we can help further serve your community now and in the future. So before we dive into that, I just want to say a couple brief words about VIA as a company. So you may not have heard our name, but we are the world's leading provider of innovative transportation technology. So what we do is create and deliver software that powers everything transportation-wise, from microtransit, much like the service that we run here in Annapolis, to paratransit to fixed route software. We also do everything from electric vehicles to autonomous vehicles. So everything on this transportation-wise, we are helping power. As the pioneer in the field of microtransit, we've grown rapidly over the past 5-10 years. As you can see here, we've now partnered with 600 plus cities, towns, and private companies across the world on every continent except Antarctica in 40 countries. And so we've actually completed over 100 million rides on our platform to date. I'm personally really excited about this partnership with Annapolis. As a Virginia guy, I love coming up here and spending time in your community. So this is a really exciting one for me personally. All right, so Annapolis Go, right? Just a short time ago, we launched this on-demand corner-to-corner service, really with the immediate goal being to help supplement the loss of this downtown parking and provide affordable, efficient, green, and shared rides to visitors, employees, residents, and commuters to the downtown area. So some basic facts about the service. It's really quite straightforward. We do this with some innovative technology that you can access on your smartphone, a small vehicle fleet, and a rider app. So what we have currently on the road is up to 4 vehicles at a time, 2 of which are wheelchair accessible. You're able to pull up your phone and download the Annapolis Go app, book a ride there, or dial into our call centers and we'll book your ride from start to finish. Rides are really affordable, $2, payable by cash or credit. And as long as you're within service hours and within the service zone, you can call an on-demand ride whenever you please. So how to actually do this? Like I said, it's really straightforward. This will operate much like the other apps that you know on your smartphone. You go to your App Store or the Google Play Store if you're on Android. Search for Annapolis Go, download it and create an account, and you'll have an account within 1 minute. From there, when you are ready to ride, you can either enter in your credit card information or select that you want to pay with cash. Set your pickup and drop off locations. As you'll see here from step number 3, you're then offered a few ride proposals, right? One ride proposal might say, hey, we'll be there in 5 minutes, or if you're not quite ready, we'll be there in 15 minutes. You get to decide. So you'll select that ride that you want, and then from there, the app will tell you where exactly to walk, and will show you on that screen how far away the vehicle is. It'll pick you up, and if there are other riders along that path that you're going, we'll pick them up as well and get multiple riders within one vehicle and make sure that we're dropping those individuals off in the most efficient route possible. So these are shared rides, good thing to remember. So when do we operate and where do we operate? So our current operating hours are 1 to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, and then on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. So we are a 7 days a week service. The service zone is pretty large and includes some interesting, some great points of interest. So as you can see on the northern side, it stops just under Route 50, going all the way to, I believe, that is Forest Road, and then Forest Drive, excuse me, and then down south to the Annapolis Maritime Museum, obviously hugging the coast, all the way up to City Dock. As long as you're within that dark blue area, you can call these rides on demand. And get dropped off anywhere else in that area. And right within the app, we recommend points of interest to our riders. So it could be anything from the library to the Naval Academy to the State House and City Hall, and you'll see those prominently displayed on the app and easy selections for our riders. So what I wanted to show here was just a few different buckets of ideas that we had where we think we could be, a further partner with the city of Annapolis and use Annapolis Go to drive some innovation and innovation ideas for the city. So in the short term, of course, we see two main goals. Item number one being to continue to drive business development and workforce mobility using this innovative technology, right? So Eileen, of course, talked about some of the problems that we're facing with people who formerly parked in neighborhoods. They're not able to access this platform and take them where they need to go for less than an hour's worth of parking. And then, of course, to help mitigate the impact of the garage closures on local businesses, their employees, and their visitors, and the community at large trying to move from elsewhere in Annapolis down to the downtown area. In the medium term, we think there's some interesting partnership ideas that we could pursue with the city of Annapolis or, particular groups within the city. First they come to mind are the U.S. Naval Academy in St. John's, helping move students from campus to other locations within the city itself. And then also investigate how our technology can support Annapolis residents that might live in transit deserts or be without access to personal vehicles. And then finally, in the long term, I think these are two really exciting ideas. On-demand services like this are pretty flexible, a pretty flexible offering to introduce and complement other transit offerings within a city. And we, like to potentially be a partner in Annapolis's emerging transit options. And then, of course, continue to investigate, use our data to see how on-demand transit can further, join the city's long-term vision of transit equity and access in general. So again, I think there's some really exciting short, medium, and long-term opportunities for Annapolis Go to further serve the city of Annapolis. And with that concludes the presented material that we have on Annapolis Go. Sounds great.
Great. Thank you very much. I actually have several questions for you.
Sure.
In looking at the service hours, Monday through Friday, 1 to 7, is there reasoning behind why the service ends at 7?
Me to get into that.
Sure, and then I can talk about.
So the challenge is what we had hoped was possibly to divide it into shifts so that there would be a morning noontime shift and an evening shift. The VIA business model doesn't work that way. So if you're going to do a shift, it's one continuous shift. With that said, we wanted to pick up the dinner hour, and we wanted to pick up certainly part of the daytime shopping for the customers. And that's how we wound up with the 1 to 7. There's nothing magical about it. On the weekend, Saturday, the time is probably going to be 12 to 8, and I think Sunday the same, because we're seeing more demand. If people come in for dinner, they can come in, but they're not finishing dinner till 7:30 or 8. I think there would be demand for longer service hours. The issue is the cost. The amount of hours, what do we have, 46 hours now? I think we have 46 hours. And for the duration that the garage is down, that's a significant subsidy. It comes out of the larger project, but it's a $700,000 and some subsidy. We could, if we extended the hours, you're probably looking at a couple $100,000 more subsidy. So that's the short answer, but there's nothing magical about Saturday and Sunday are more intuitive. But during the week, you've got sort of we're doing, I think it's 6 hours now during the week. It's simply, how do you try and pick up the primary times? And by only having 6 hours, for customers, they would have to use it in the mid-afternoon. Employees, it misses employees with those hours. So you want to add anything?
Yeah, sure. And so typically we find kind of like split out service hours between morning and evening, just generally confusing for riders. So we like to have kind of continuous service hours. And with the weekday ones, you might have some individuals who are able to use it for later lunches, and then also, commuting back home up to the 7 p.m. hour, or additional nightlife services. The nice thing about the platform is that we can use the data to see exactly when folks are requesting rides and use that to shift around what we're offering, right? So like Eileen mentioned, we're looking at hours, shifting the hours slightly back during the weekends to capture folks who might need a ride at, say, 7:30 as opposed to one at 6:30. So there is the flexibility in the system, and we have the information to be able to pivot, within reason to match where rider demand really is.
Okay. And kind of along that, the service zones, why doesn't it cover the entire city?
The issue there, and I think Sebastian can go into more detail, the issue there is trying to keep it within roughly, a 10-minute pickup and drop-off range. So timing was the primary issue in terms of going down to Edgewood Road and that area.
And then I think additionally, it's important to keep in mind that these services can always grow, expand, change. And what you see with some cities is we might pilot a certain area, right? Pilot the downtown area, for example, to help mitigate the loss of parking. But if there's rider demand, if there's appetite within the city and the community, these can always be expanded, right? So our fleet size currently is 4 vehicles. And with that fleet size and anticipated demand, this is a logical zone to start out with. However, if we do see, that the community wants further service, that's definitely something that VIA and the city can partner on further and make possible if we want to expand to additional parts of the city.
One of the biggest complaints I've had are people that live down by the Giant on Edgewood Road that certainly can't walk, would be a hard bike or scooter trip. They're feeling completely left out of the possibility of using this service, and they're going to go to Annapolis Town Center instead because they can just drive and park there.
Yeah.
So if our goal is to continue to keep people coming downtown, I think that we should take a look at expanding that, even if it extends the time, because for me, I could technically walk, and I've actually tried twice to use VIA and ended up walking because the closest VIA stop for me was almost halfway to downtown.
Gotcha.
Is that, do you have, if it were expanded, do you have sufficient vehicles to expand it without impacting the delivery time? Is that something you want to go back and take a look at?
Yeah, so 2 things I'd say. We're always looking for more feedback from the community exactly like that, right? We run surveys as well, and we're also hearing demand from different areas, different potential riders that would like service around where they live. So any ideas like that, we love to hear them. We're definitely open to expanding to additional service areas. Now, to get to Eileen's question is, do we have enough vehicles? It kind of depends on the scope of the expansion, right? If we're adding 50 more square miles, four vehicles is not gonna cut it, and we need to add more vehicles. However, if it's maybe one little pocket, we might have the capacity to do that at this time. It really just depends on what we're looking to add and the scale of it.
So it's, well, you can't really see it well on this.
Make sure you get on the mic, Eileen.
Sorry. You can't really see it very well on this map, but it's the area adjacent to the southern portion. It's the area that would be adjacent to, is that, I'm looking at the map, is that Back Creek or Spa Creek that we see?
Back Creek?
It's adjacent to Back Creek. So it's that, so it would, where you come down Forest, you'd continue to come down and then basically go up Back Creek.
How far does that go down?
I mean, we're 7 miles total square, so.
What do you think, a mile?
So, yeah, Edgewood Road is only about a mile and a half. But, so, jumping on that point real quick,
yeah, please.
the timing, because that's my ward is down, you see Back Creek where that, right outside the area and also to the south a little ways. And so I've heard frustration because it covers 75% of the city, but leaves that. And so that's what we're trying to figure out is what would it take to cover the rest of that 25%. And I hear the timing issue, but having driven around the city for 20 years and a lot of time as an inspector as well, so driving from this end to the other, depending on the route you take, you can get anywhere in the city within 10, 15 minutes. 15 minutes max, especially unless you go downtown and get stuck in traffic. But there are ways to get around to avoid that. So I don't know if that could be factored in because especially in my ward, that road there has no transit access at all. The nearest is out on the main road at the giant shopping center. They have to get a bus, take the bus to Eastport, get a transfer, and go downtown. And by that time, it's going to be half an hour. Or more. And so, and there are a lot of seniors who live down Edgewood Road who had been asking me for a bus, but the buses can't go down that road because of the size. And so this would be a perfect kind of service to take down there because they really don't have any other options.
Yeah, that's great. And we absolutely love to hear about communities and groups that, need access to exactly this type of service. So based on what I can see here and what I know about kind of our current demand and ridership numbers and supply in the system, I would say that looks like something that we could potentially serve. However, I would need to, take a technical look at it.
What we can do is ask them to go back. I know initially the manager asked that question when you brought it up. And the initial response was what I gave you. What we can do is go back and ask them to do a little bit deeper dive. In other words, when you say it's going to add time, how much time? When you say it's going to add money, how much money? And so to go the next level down with a deeper dive, we can do that.
Exactly. And one other thing to keep in mind is you said 25% of the city is not covered, right? So some of the questions that we'd have to look into and research is, say, for example, what is the population of that 25%? That's one of the key pieces of information that we use to project ridership. And then we compare that against current ridership or current supply of vehicles. And then from there, we're able to say, yes, this is something that we could potentially serve with given our current fleet. Or no, we might need to add 1 or 2 vehicles because we project this many more ride requests per day, and we want to ensure we have that good quality of service and that we can, pick people up within a reasonable time frame and get them to where they need to go.
Now, if you just get a boat, you could save time.
We haven't pioneered that yet, but we'll get there.
Do you have questions?
Thank you so much for the presentation. We're talking about, of course, providing the service in the city. I don't know if you've ever gotten any feedback because we have ridership that goes and works at the Annapolis Mall as well as the hospital. Has there been any feedback or requests for a service to that area?
Gotcha. That's a great question. Is the Annapolis Mall what we were just discussing?
Westfield.
Side of the city. And
Is it right around Route 50?
yeah, it's up here.
Gotcha. Okay.
Westfield, Annapolis.
Gotcha. Okay. That's a great question. That's actually something we were discussing earlier today, actually, on our weekly call. So yes, we've heard some rider feedback that there would be interest from that area to include that in the service zone. Like I said, we continually collect ridership data and survey folks. So yes, we're hearing some initial demand and ask for service in that area.
Okay, great, because we have quite a few people, especially at work at the hospital. That's a big employer within the city, probably the largest. And it's always a good use to look at the equity lens and equity use and see who needs the service.
So there are really two issues here. The first issue is the objective initially, and now we're moving into a second objective, which is fine. The initial objective was, how do we get people out of their cars at Park Place and into downtown? So that was the first objective. But as I anticipated, or any of you could anticipate as well, people like the idea. I mean, I like the idea. I would use it to come downtown. By it not being any earlier in the day, it doesn't seem to work for me to use it to come downtown for meetings. But for employment, the other thing that we're starting to look at now is, what's the long-term use? We've got 14 months right now while the garage is down. After that, is this a service that could really provide a very positive access to communities where people don't have single occupancy vehicles? And the issue there ultimately for the Transportation Committee will be how this service will compete, with the transit service. But I think now we're at the point to start to see, is there a demand for people to use it for employment, to take to the mall, to take to the hospital? What about the seniors who are down in Edgewood Road who want to go shopping? So that's really what we're going to start looking into now, and then it'll be policy decisions for the council. Do you want to continue it at the end of 14 months? It's been a big subsidy, and we'll have to see at that time how much the ridership increases. But I would think there would be long-term a lot of demand for this kind of access.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
Yeah, so on that point, I think you hit the nail on the head as far as two different questions, right? Because the way it's set up now is it doesn't appear that it's set up to support employment. It's set up to encourage people to come down, like you said, midday to shop, mid-afternoon to shop, and also in the evening to come out to the restaurants and to shop as well. Not employment. I think if we were to go to that other phase question you're talking about in terms of shifting to employment, I think that's a question where we definitely have to have a lot more discussion about our transit system.
Yeah.
Our transit system is set up for employment in many ways, right? It's at least certain of the routes, right? We have a route that goes out to the hospital, out to the mall. We have one that goes out to Riva Road, which is another shopping center, right? But I think if we want to, my thoughts would be that we just focus on improving that first priority, which is even if you stick with the hours, because I think that's right. The goal with the garage being removed is we want to get people downtown because of the parking, right? And so I think we need to do whatever is going to expand upon that goal first, and then maybe we go to the second goal after that's accomplished. But I think as far as meeting that first goal, that's where I would encourage you to look to expand in some of the other wards, my ward, but also Alderwoman Finlayson has a couple neighborhoods that are not included at lower income who I think would benefit from this a lot. Again, just to get downtown, because, and I think also with that whole phase one, first priority focus would be how do we, like you've said, how do we get people downtown? It's not about sending them out to, no offense, Parole Town Center or Annapolis. It's technically Annapolis Town Center, but I refuse to call it that because it's not in the city. But, or it's not our job to take people out to the mall, right? Take people downtown to support our city and our commerce. And so that's where my residents, those who I've heard from, are not talking about employment, they're talking about going down there to participate downtown and as whatever during a parade, to shop, to or what have you. So that's where I would definitely, but that's my question on that is I don't know what the parameters are as far as, I know that this came about and is funded in large part or completely out of the ARPA, I mean the
So it's funded,
garage deal, right?
it's, what we have is the Hunt, Amber, and AMRP are all the same thing. So I'll use different terms, they all mean the same thing. So the financial arm of Hunt, which is Hunt Ketchup, basically, is Amber. And then the city's group is AMRP. So in the public-private partnership, when we say it's funded out of them, ultimately, the city pays for it. But the way it's structured is that during the pre-development agreement, which we're still in right now, they have a line item for, I think it's $735. It's roughly around $750,000 for all of this. And that is where VIA is being paid. Ultimately, after all is said and done, the Hunt Amber, the private partnership, they earn their fee through the revenues from the garage. So ultimately, the city winds up in one form or another paying for it, just not directly. So with that said, as we go into the next phase, I'm talking and thinking, never good. If we go into the next phase.
What do you mean by the next phase?
The next phase, which is where you have the construction and the pre-development agreement has ended and we're in construction. The next phase for the next financial phase, there would probably, if it's going to be expanded, that would just have to be, we would have to figure out the numbers and we would just incorporate that into the next phase of what we're doing, I guess is what I'm saying. That's how it would be done. The revenues right now, while they're promising, they're not high. We just looked at the revenues today, and the revenues could justify a little bit of an expansion, like maybe an hour later or an hour earlier. But the bottom line is we need to figure out how much more this would cost and incorporate that cost into the next financial phase.
Yeah, and I think looking at maybe a comparison, and you may have done this to a certain degree already, but looking at our existing transit routes to see what neighborhoods have the least amount of mobility coverage, right, essentially, right? Because I know some neighborhoods do have a lot of bus coverage, some in mine don't at all, and so they could use from, especially, again, I'm going back to the seniors, because some of these senior homes, they don't have shuttles. Some have their own shuttles, private, some don't, and so they're essentially stranded there because they can't walk that far to the bus, and this would be perfect for them. And we've talked about trying to do a microtransit system ourselves in the past, but we just couldn't because of the budget constraints. So this is really a good opportunity. So I would definitely encourage, if you have room to expand, look at doing that. But I'd also say, you were talking before about, I think, the different goals or phases you were saying. The main goal is downtown right now. But before we go into that other phase 2, as you might want to call it, as far as employment, transportation, is that I think we would really need to look at the impacts to our own transit system, right? We just passed in our budget increasing advertising on our transit system because the ridership has gone down because of COVID and just general, I think people just aren't too excited to ride the bus unless they're used to it. And so we're trying to boost that. And I think we need to be careful we don't conflict with our own system, which is hemorrhaging money to begin with before we do that phase. But this is a very niche, I think in many ways, system. But I'm curious, has there been a discussion with the taxi cab drivers, I mean, surprisingly, we haven't heard from them as far as complaints. Maybe it's because the late Mr. Eads is no longer with us, but
I have not heard any complaints or feedback from the taxi cab companies.
I mean, so you say you operate, I presume, with this kind of service in many parts of the world, like you showed. Has there been conflict in other cities in between those kind of interest? I don't know what you call them, interest groups or entities.
Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't heard of any conflicts with our drivers, right? We tend to think of microtransit as affordable public transportation, right?
Yeah.
Oftentimes we see it complement fixed route transit, or other times we see it replace really underperforming fixed route transit. Really, traditionally the conflict has been with other private one-to-one ride-hailing companies, but we really do look at ourselves as a different offering, and we've had no conflicts with taxi cab operators here or in the other markets that I personally work with, and I haven't heard of reports from others, so I don't really think that's a challenge or an issue.
Okay.
I have a quick question about data. You talked about you gathering data and you can make changes based on data. So I'd be interested to see if you have the ability to tell us how many rides start sort of in the center of the service area and end at City Dock versus on the outskirts of the service area, which might help us in determining, expanding that service area. Because if we've got a car kind of assigned to Lafayette, which technically it's easier for them to walk than to wait for, so to speak. Maybe that will help us, the data in that. Is that the kind of data that you're gathering?
Yeah, absolutely. We have the ability to show where most ride requests start and end. We can visualize that on some of our data tools. We're happy to look into those types of analyses and present that to the city. That's really all on demand. And then we have further ability from there also to show where, certain areas might be a transit desert. For example, if there's a fixed route doesn't run through there, we can actually overlay all of the fixed routes of Annapolis on top of our service zone and show where there might be gaps. We also have the ability to show where there are households, what percentage of households that have one or less vehicle or across the city of Annapolis. So we can do that type of analysis, and we're happy to do it to aid the city in thinking through the next phase of what Annapolis Go might be. And to add a little more context as well, this is a very new service, right? So we're really excited to see how it grows and changes, and every service is different. But from some of my more mature services that have been up for a year or two, going back to an earlier point, we really see some interesting ridership patterns, right? And these run the gamut from microtransit services that have either complemented a fixed route system or replaced underperforming fixed route lines, right? And you see when you go into areas that are transit deserts or don't have a fixed route, ridership explodes, right? And it's off the charts, and the demand is there for these types of services. And we get to those conclusions. We come to the recommendations of where we think a city should expand by running that exact type of analysis that I was just explaining. And one other thing to keep in mind is in a service that I work with every week in Florida, where we run almost 6,000 rides a week, 40% of our riders are over the age of 60. So we see demand from all different types of groups with all different types of needs being served by microtransit services just like this.
Great. Yeah, I'd love to see that too.
They have every kind of data, and, on the calls, you'll say, can you do this? And they can do it, so they have lots of data.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that would be really fascinating to see, because I think, again, we're in next fiscal year, I think we're set to do hopefully sooner if we can convince them, but to do a review of our own transit system, which I think would include looking at the routes, looking at presumably the infrastructure, meaning the buses. So it'd be really interesting to look, if you have case studies or information regarding, like you mentioned, how this fits in the scenarios where it's replacing the system, but also in the scenarios where it's enhancing the system. Those are, I think, really two key case studies to look at, as far as my mind. And Just a couple other quick questions. Are there signs up for this in the city, Eileen?
What they have done, what VIA has done to date, is a lot of social media, and we have on the website, there are not a lot of signs. The emphasis has been social media, and I'm trying to think, it's on the website, it's in all the brochures, but it's not on the signs. I can ask Mitchell if it's included, and I know it's been part of a major part of the outreach, but I don't think it's on, hard fixed signs.
Well, I mean, I'm just thinking about how best, and you obviously know, I think, better, but I'm thinking how to get the word out to residents, and in my experience, social media has not been all that successful as far as me getting the word out, especially since I'm probably maybe because I have a lot of seniors in my community. But I think you could talk to Public Works about including maybe the pamphlet or a little sign in the water bill mailers and all the utility bills that get mailed out. Maybe even just put in like a ad in the newspaper.
Yeah, so that's a great point. Typically, we do see digital ads work quite well, but always not with every population group, right? So we have a dedicated, what we call rider growth team, and their specialty, their dedicated goal is to get the word out about the service and make sure folks understand what it is, how to use it, how they can access it, and if there are different tactics or techniques that might be better for your specific area, this is the exact type of thing that we want and need to hear. Based on your local expertise. We're always open to those ideas.
Well, we have, for example, a commission on the aging, and they may be a good body to help get the word out to that population.
Great.
There are also, we have a number of commissions that might be appropriate for helping to get the word out. So just real quick, because I know at least I'm running short on time. I think the 8 p.m., I've heard some comments that 8 p.m. would give some more flexibility. I think you already mentioned that as far as dinner. Regarding Round Boulevard, has anybody spoken to the state about putting up a sign for the parking? Because it seems like it'd be in their interest to.
We had a long call today before this meeting about about signage and the state. I'm trying to think of how to. I think we were all very optimistic. Let me answer the question differently. The Naval Academy, St. John's, Anne Arundel County have all been very interested in working with us in getting these messages out. I don't think so much the state, but I think it's finding the right person in the state is how I would put it. But all these other groups, and Visit Annapolis has included this. They did a major mail out, I want to say a couple weeks ago, and they included the VIA information in that. So Visit Annapolis, the Naval Academy, St. John's have all been including it. I don't know to what extent the state has.
Okay. The last question would be regarding the parking. Has the county or the state agreed to open up their garages even on the weekends even? I'm thinking the county garage right next to Gott's. There's a lot of space in there.
Yes.
Even if it's just the weekend, I imagine that'd be helpful.
I don't think, and this is a piece of information we need to get out, the county garage is open all weekend and it's free. The garage by St. John's, I mean, it's open at night and all weekend. I park a lot of the times, that's where I'll park and walk into town. And Whitmore, of course, is available. So it's that information that we need to get out. I mean, it's all part of what I was trying to text Mitchell to see what
Just
there's.
down the stairs.
There's a inclusion in, I want to say, a water bill that's going out that has a lot of this information. I didn't know how much of Via's information is in it, but she just has finished including all of this information in, I believe it's a water bill that's going out.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Just going back, Eileen and I have had many, many conversations about downtown and certain populations in the city that do not visit. Historically, that was not the case, but more recently it has been. And I'm just wondering if we can come up maybe with some sort of plan, even using this apparatus, to get certain populations downtown that we never see at all. Hence my question to connect possibly with something concerning the mall workers or Anne Arundel Medical Center. That might be a vehicle where we could start to see more traffic downtown from certain communities that we don't at all see.
I think we will be, because if you think of it, if I were in a situation where I didn't have a car or didn't have immediate access, and I had a choice between Via or finding a bus and making a bus transfer, I think this would be a very quick way to get people downtown. And the term that Sebastian educated me about today is the transit deserts. But this seems to be the idea of social equity in transportation. I think $2 is affordable. And you think about what it would cost you to take an Uber in. So, yeah, what we need to do, I need to sit down with Mitchell and Brandon Murray, who I think you've met, and let's figure out how we get, it's what we've been doing, but we've been doing it generally for customers and visitors, how we get, whether it's a senior population, where there's more of a transit desert, how we get the information out there, because I think this would be a very, very good way for to bring people into downtown who've been reluctant in the past and who are not going to want to pay $8. I mean, I don't want to pay $8, to park for half an hour.
Thank you. That's something we can certainly discuss further.
Thank you so much for your time today and answering all of our questions. Appreciate it. I know there's a lot of people really excited about it and using it, and I think that, some expansion will help keep some of those people that are on the fringe. And when I say fringe, I mean on the edge of the service area.
Lots of opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for your time. Appreciate it.
Just good.
Yes, please.
Madam Chair, I'd like to move we reconsider our postponement of AP 30-22.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. If you'd like to come.
Okay, that's great. I didn't know I was AB 322 or whatever it is. Good to see you, alderwomen and aldermen. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Hillary contacted me and said, "Are you coming down?" And I said,
Turn your mic on, please.
"Sure." Hillary texted me and said, "Your consideration is this afternoon." I said, "When we come down," it took about 6 minutes. I was so lucky because of the garage. I was able to find something on conduit, so I'm here.
Perfect.
So
Thank you.
any questions that you have, I'm excited to get back to the Transportation Board. I served for 5 or 6 years. Mayor Cohen appointed me when he first became mayor. I served as vice chair under the retired mayor of Annapolis. and I'm excited to serve under the leadership of Mr. Regal. He and I have been on many Annapolis committees together and outside of the city structure also, so I feel very confident in his leadership. And I think I bring a lot to the table from transportation. It's always sort of been my hobby, the thing I'm most interested in. And I think that I would be a good addition. I have a lot of administrative history, or what do they call it? I know a lot about the transportation for the city going way back to when not Alderwoman Pindell Charles, but before you guys were on the council. So my love of transportation has always been there for my whole life, and I'm glad we've come quite a ways, but we still have a lot more to do. I live over in the Landings, over by the rec center, and I was thinking about what I might say. There wasn't a single bicycle stencil the entire way. And I know that Bay Ridge has been designated as a bicycle route to get through. We should let people know about it. Not just the bicyclists. I think the bicyclists know about it. It's the drivers that you should put something on the roads to say, hey, look, be a little bit more careful because there might be some bicyclists here. I think that's crucial. I talked when my nomination was known, my alderman, Brooks, and I had a good conversation. It was short, but he told me that he would support me also. So I feel I've touched the bases, and if there's anything you may like to make sure that I understand before I take this position, I'd be happy to, hear what you have to say.
Well, I like the fact that you're talking about bicycles, as Kurt alluded to the fact that that's going to be their next big project is bicycle safety throughout the city. So I appreciate that.
I think now that the city's bringing a bunch of bikes in because of garages, I think we really have to be more aware of them. And it goes along with, it goes along with what Annapolis is. If you've ever seen some of the European cities, I mean, you go there and it's like you don't need a car, and it's bicycles. I was just up in New York over Memorial Day weekend, and it seems like New York has become more bicycle friendly. And if New York can, then certainly Annapolis can. So.
Yes.
Well, it sounds like this is largely a reappointment, I guess, in this case. I didn't know you were on there before. But I guess things have changed even in that short amount of time. We now have microtransit, EVs, which are obviously changing the transportation world. So I'm assuming you have an interest in those. And have you been keeping up with those technologies?
Sure. I love it. My family has a hybrid vehicle. I was lobbying for it. I think if I could afford a Tesla, I would buy a Tesla right now. One of the issues that I think and I don't know if the Transportation Board is going to take this. I don't want to, dictate the agenda. But one of the things that I see is right on the horizon for everything, and we're talking county, state, everyone, is my townhouse community. My community is single-family houses. Brooke Schendelmeyer lives over in the single-family houses. I live in the townhouse section. What are my options as far as a plug-in for if I were to have a Tesla? And I don't want to anger any of my neighbors, but at the same time, as a city council, we should be promoting that, clean energy.
Yeah, I hope to have some legislation over the next 12 months addressing that, specifically for multifamily units, and how we may want to require them to put in a certain number of chargers per resident, or that they require they'd have to if they're requested by a resident. Anyway, I haven't gotten too far along with. I just have a concept. So if the board wants to submit recommendations on that or wait for legislation, that's certainly appreciated.
Well, that's right there. And I think these are things that we can clearly see on the horizon. They're not beyond the horizon. They're on the horizon. They're actually coming and facing us. And Annapolis, I've always believed that as far as municipal policy goes, because of our unique position as a state capital, but also as sort of like, I always considered ourselves like the stalwart of the Chesapeake Bay, that there's certain things that we should be doing ahead of everyone else. And electric vehicles, yes, clean water, recycling, those type of things we should always be the leader in as Annapolis. And here we have an opportunity to do that. So I think we could. I think we should.
Great. Any further questions? All right. We appreciate you coming in. Thank you so much. And
I move that we recommend the appointment of Mr. John Giannetti.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
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 That's great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And I'm a big fan of your husband. He sat on the committee I chaired to get rid of the garage way back when under Mayor Cohen. So he's great. Thank you
so
all very much.
Do I have a motion to adjourn? Oh,
So moved.
Second.
all right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.
Great meeting.
Do I get to do that?